What do you remember about Lyle? What was he like as a young child?
We were always playing sports with him. He was great in sports, very, very dynamic, really charming and polite even as a kid. He was very kind. He was protective of my sisters and I. We always had the same teams. Lyle and Joy would play against Fern, Erik, and myself, and Lyle would always say that Joy had to be on his team. Joy was really too little to play at the time, and he would always say that she had to be on his team because she was the best and he couldn't play without her. And it was just nice because she was really too young to play, and they always won.
I just watched the Netflix show and I'm deeply disappointed with how Netflix, Ryan Murphy specifically, portrayed the Menendez brothers. The brothers were highly sexualized throughout the show, and Ryan Murphy fantasizes about Erik being gay and two incestuous brothers. You can be gay, Ryan, but it's not okay what you're doing here. There's nothing sexy about child abuse. Also, I'd like to mention how much Lyle was portrayed as a villain throughout the series. Snorting coke, that never happened. These were star tennis players. Lyle was not a tough guy as he was portrayed in the show, and he wasn't arrogant or a douchebag. In real life, Lyle has been described as quiet and introverted.
Spent the night before in the ultra-chic Hotel Bel Air.
How'd they behave when they were there?
Lyle Menendez was very cool, calm, and collected.
The boys were never really allowed to spend time with other children. They didn't socialize much either. Now, Erik and Lyle have both provided statements about the series, which I will get into a little later. For now, let's go back to when it all started. On the evening of Sunday, August 20th, 1989, José and Kitty Menéndez were shot multiple times at close range. The killing will bring into question whether or not this was a senseless murder or if it was self-defense. Over 20 decades will go by before the public starts to question the legal merits of this case. The Menendez family seemed like the perfect all-American family. They were rich and lived a lavish lifestyle. José was born in Cuba and immigrated to the United States as a teenager after the Cuban Revolution of the 1950s. He came from a wealthy family, but most of it was taken from the communist government. José then lived in his cousin's attic until he earned a college scholarship. Soon he would meet his wife, Mary Louise Anderson, a beauty pageant queen who everyone called Kitty. They got married sometime in the 1960s and moved to New York City, where José earned an accounting degree from Queens College. José washed dishes, and then he worked his way to become a successful entertainment executive at Live Entertainment. He spent the early 80s as the head of RCA Records and had a hand in signing a band such as Duran Duran. José and Kitty had their oldest son while in Boston, Lyle, born January 10, 1968, and then Erik, who was born November 27, 1970 in LA. At this time, Kitty retired from her teaching job and became a stay-at-home mother. Erik and Lyle were star tennis players. Their father, José, drove the boys to overwork in athletics. It eventually became overbearing and the brothers no longer enjoyed the sports, but they were forced to play regardless. Allegedly, José was disappointed with his children's behavior. While living in Calabasas, before the family moved to Beverly Hills, Erik and Lyle had been doing some burglary at their friends' homes. They laughed it off as a joke, but when the boys realized they could get away with it, they stole more. In fact, they stole over $100,000 in jewelry and cash. José was embarrassed and made an agreement with the district attorney that Erik would go to juvie, but he ended up on probation and received 6 months of therapy, instead with Dr. Jerome Oziel, who had a handful of celebrity patients. So basically, Erik took the slack for Lyle, and Erik was only put through therapy for the court. José didn't want anything from the past to come up and ruin his chance of becoming a U.S. Senate. Otherwise, he would never put Erik through therapy. It was never for Erik to just talk about his feelings or anything like that. Again, as I mentioned, it was only for the court. So eventually they moved out of Calabasas as José was embarrassed by his sons. The family lived in a mansion in Beverly Hills and seemed to live a happy lifestyle from then on. But nothing was as it seemed on the outside. This family held a lot of secrets, some small like Kitty getting a facelift, and others really deep and dark. In 1987, Lyle graduated from Beverly Hills High School. He went to Princeton University, where he would play tennis, but he got in trouble for plagiarizing. Lyle denied it and didn't feel it was really a big deal. José was called in, and after 4 hours in front of the diplomats committee, Lyle was asked to voluntarily leave for a year or be expelled. Mind you, José didn't really care that Lyle was plagiarizing. This was nothing new to him and Kitty. They had done the homework for the boys throughout high school and even college. The suspension was kept a family secret. Meanwhile, Erik enrolled at Beverly Hills High School for his senior year. His teacher noticed he had issues reading, and when bringing it up to Kitty replied that Erik had a learning disability they had tested for when he was younger. He was dyslexic. Now, if the school knew early on, they could have helped Erik. Now, this was another family secret. Not even relatives or friends knew about this, and sadly, the school never knew either. On August 20th, 1989, Lyle and Erik planned on meeting a friend and tennis coach, Perry Herman, and his friend Todd Hall, who they frequently spent time with. They were going to watch Batman in theaters that night, so the boys had their dinner at home and then they headed out to meet with their friend at around 10 p.m. At this time, Kitty and José were settling in for the night. Kitty rested her head on José's lap in the family room. They had been watching a James Bond movie, drinking wine and eating berries and cream. Family friends say the couple seemed to have rekindled their relationship, as things had been rocky in the past. José and Kitty were dozing off. It was quiet in the mansion. The housekeeper had been off. The alarms were disabled, as José felt Beverly Hills was a safe place. In the distance, a neighbor heard crackling sounds similar to fireworks. Her 12-year-old wanted to call the cops, but in this neighborhood there was nothing to be scared of. Unfortunately, 2 unknown assailants approached and entered the Menéndez family home, firing shots from behind José and Kitty. José stood up and said, "No, no, no, no." A bullet hit his leg, and then he was shot in the back of the head. He died almost instantly, but shots were fired far too many times. They hit him in the chest, arm, and elbow. Kitty was terrified. She looked over only to see a barrel shotgun pointed at her cheek. She lifted her hand to protect herself, but of course, at no avail. Kitty had been shot in the legs, arms, and even chest. She waited in agonizing pain, terror, and confusion as one of the assailants went out to reload their gun and come back for the final shot. Kitty was dead on the floor in front of José. Now, these details are graphic, so just a warning. José's brain had been eviscerated. Kitty's face was practically unrecognizable from that last blow to the face. Every bone in her face was broken and her teeth shattered. Her left knee was bent at a 45 angle from a shot to her knee. In total, there were 9 to 10 shots fired at her. Meanwhile, Lyle and Erik were lost. Perry Berman and his friend Todd Hall left the Taste of LA festival around 10:20, as Lyle and Erik were nowhere to be seen. Lyle called to ask where Perry had been. Perry explained that he had waited for them at the festival and asked what had happened to them. Lyle let him know that they had been lost, but told Perry he had to meet with them to discuss tennis. Perry was apprehensive, but agreed to meet at the Cheesecake Factory in Beverly Hills. They agreed. Lyle called back minutes later, suggesting they meet at the mansion to pick up a fake ID for Erik so he could drink beers with them. Perry said he would not do that and would meet them at the restaurant instead. Lyle and Erik headed back to their home and arrived in front of their gate around 11:30 p.m. Their front door was unlocked. The brothers walked in, noticing the light on and the smoke in the air. A few minutes later, a 911 call was made.
Beverly Hills emergency?
Yes, police.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man,
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
102, 722 North Elmont.
What happened?
I have a hysterical person on. I'm trying to get screened further. Other units responding. Is the person still
happened? We have units around. What happened? Who shot who? I don't know. I just came home. You came home and found who shot? Mom and Dad.
You know if they're still in the house, the people that did the shooting.
Get away from me. Okay, hey, let me talk to Erik. Who is the person that was shot?
My mom and my dad.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and my dad.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're on our way over there with the ambulance.
Okay, I gotta go.
Okay.
Oh.
Hello, this is police department.
Yes.
Okay, I want you to come outside. Okay, please come out the front door.
I gotta tell my brother.
When police arrived, they weren't sure if the suspects were still around. The search team entered the Menéndez family mansion, noticing gym bags and clothes on the floor, and then the bodies of José and Kitty, who were obviously dead. Investigators made the decision not to check the hands of Lyle and Erik for gunpowder residue, and treated the boys as they would with any child who had just lost their parents. Still, it was odd that the boys called 911 from inside the house, as most people would fear the suspect was still around, and go over to a neighbor's house for help. However, the boys were noticeably in shock. Soon the bodies were loaded in the back of an ambulance and off it rode with the picturesque view of Beverly Hills mansions and green lawns. Neighbors stood on their sidewalks hoping it was a targeted attack. Things like this just didn't happen in Beverly Hills. Maurice Angel was on patrol with his partner Mike Dillard when a radio call was broadcasted shortly before midnight reporting a shooting at 722 North Elm Drive. By the time they arrived, there were already several other officers on the scene. Erik was shouting, "I'm going to kill them. I'm going to torture them. Who would do this? We're going to get those guys." "Who are you going to get?" asked Angel. He had the impression Erik seemed to know the identity of the killers, but Erik didn't answer him and Angel didn't push it. Angel, however, noticed the small chatter between the boys when officers were looking away, but when they turned towards them, the boys would act hysterical again. Lyle's story had also changed twice. First, they were wine tasting at the Santa Monica Convention Center. Then they were at Century City watching a movie. An hour later, Angel drove to the police station. Lyle wanted to drive there on their own. Angel noticed how stressed they were in the back of the car, constantly asking what was happening and when they would be able to leave. Once they were at the police station, Angel introduced the boys to Sergeant Tom Edmonds. Lyle was calm, but Erik wasn't. The boys called their tennis coach, Mark Hefferman. Erik had even called him during the 911 call Lyle made. Erik wanted Hefferman to sit with them during the interview, but Edmonds said no. The interview went like this. "Erik, we weren't going to leave home. We decided to leave home and we left home at 8. We got to the movie we ended up seeing Batman. We were going to stop at home quickly, so we pulled in front. We pulled in front of the driveway. We pulled in the side and the gate was open and we went inside and I was smelling smoke. After that we saw them and immediately I started screaming and so I went upstairs and Lyle called the police immediately." Edmonds asked whether the gate was closed when they left home. Erik said they left out the back alley. Edmonds asked, "Was it locked?" Erik said, "I don't think so." "Did you use your key to get in?" Erik said, "No, I don't think so. I think the door was unlocked." Edmonds asked Erik if he had any ideas of who might have killed his parents. Not right now. I don't know. We should have just stayed in," Erik replied. Erik was crying, so the interview ended. Lyle's story resembled Erik's story. He talked about his father being firm and not the kindest at work. Lyle explained he felt the worst for his mom because she didn't get a chance to experience life and that his father didn't treat her well. Lyle also mentioned that his mom was on the edge about something because she bought a rifle and hadn't told José about it and that Kitty was suicidal. Next, Perry Berman was asked to be at the police station. He was believed to be a top suspect in the case. Edmonds thought his interview was performative and did not believe him. An hour later, Edmonds was back at the crime scene. He felt sick to his stomach just thinking about how traumatized the boys were. The morning after José's and Kitty's murder, a Hollywood insider joked that over 100 people were going over their alibis, suggesting that José had many enemies. Surprisingly, even investigators told reporters that the crime had organized crime written all over it. 4 days after the murders, police received a call from an attorney representing the mother of a teenager that once went to school with Erik. The attorney explained that the mother believed Lyle and Erik were involved and asked the police to question a close friend of the boys, Craig Signorelli. The next day, Craig was interviewed. Craig explained that he hadn't seen Erik in the last 6 months, and the police told him no one, not even Craig, was eliminated as a suspect. Craig and Erik met in high school sophomore year. They had an instant friendship and were inseparable. At some point, José threatened to kill Craig because he thought he was a police informant against Erik during the Calabasas burglaries. Of course, this wasn't the case. Sometime later, Craig and Erik stayed at a cabin in Central California owned by Craig's family. Erik and Craig had written a screenplay about committing a perfect burglary. Police thought that the second Calabasas burglary might have been an attempt to live that out. And even stranger, Erik and Craig had written a screenplay about a man who finds his parents' will and realizes that he inherits $157 million. He ends up murdering his family. 5 days after the murders, on August 25th, a memorial was held. Many people believe the eulogy was delivered without any emotions from Lyle. Some family and friends say the boys looked stone cold. When the funeral ended, José's sister Marta Cano spoke to the media, explaining how José had possible ties to the mafia, and her belief was that it was a mafia hit. Now, Live Entertainment had orchestrated this memorial so that the press wouldn't think that their fallen member had ties to the mafia. So of course, when José's sister made the statement to the press, they were pretty pissed off. So the memorial hadn't much to do with José, as it was more to do with Live Entertainment's reputation. They wanted to protect their corporate honor. 400 people had showed up, many of whom were only there for this reason.
Kitty's sister, Joan, was at the memorial too and heard something disturbing about José.
Several men that worked with José talked to me at that memorial service and told me how he loved to humiliate other men.
Pretty shocking thing to hear at somebody's memorial service, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not very memorial.
But let's go back a bit before the memorial. Lyle and Erik had been going through a safe at home which held some jewelry. The safe at the bank had some jewelry and not much else. A day before the memorial, August 24th, Lyle and Erik went shopping to an upscale Century City shopping center for outfits to wear to the memorial. Then they went to a jewelry shop where the boys spent money on Rolex watches and money clips. The worker noticed the name on the credit card belonging to José, so she called the credit card company, which allowed the boys to use up to $250,000. The total of their spending that day came to $16,000. Now, at the time, the public thought this was odd. Even investigators were confused. Their parents were just murdered and these two were shopping, spending lots of money. However, this was nothing new to Erik and Lyle. This is how they grew up. They grew up in a very rich family. That night, they went over to see their Aunt Marta to discuss the family estate. They were shocked to learn that they were the beneficiary of their parents' estate. The estimate worth was between $8 to $14 million. They had no idea their father was worth that much. Their father had told them that he was removing them from his will, so they had no idea they were inheriting anything either. José had said he was frustrated and disappointed in his sons. 6 months before the murder, he discussed making his sister Terry Barrold and husband Carlos Barrold the executors of the family estate. So why was José so upset? I'll get into that in a little bit. Erik sobbed as Aunt Marta told him that they were indeed in the will. Both boys could not believe it. Marta said that the boys would receive $250,000 immediately from a life insurance policy. But the boys would soon learn that this wasn't all that they were receiving. A day after the memorial service on August 26, José's cousin Carlos Menéndez found a will from Kitty and José in the bathroom drawer. The will, made in the 1980s, left everything to the brothers. Carlos searched the computer in Kitty's and José's bedroom and found a file titled Will. He called computer experts to help him access the file and search the hard drives. At the time, Lyle was in New York, and when he found out, he rushed out of New York to Beverly Hills. He called a computer tech company asking if they could erase some files. Howard Whitkin arrived at the family home and was asked by Lyle to find a file called Erik Lyle Will. Whitkin said someone had overwritten those files and wasn't sure if it were an accident. Whitkins couldn't open those files after trying for an hour. Lyle seemed pleased by this and then asked him to erase everything on the computer. This way he could sell it. He also asked that it not look like someone had cleaned the computer by reloading the files except for the 4 files that had been the will. Whitkins thought this was an odd request but went on to do it anyway. So what they're saying is that Lyle tampered with those files because the new will would not have had those boys' names on it. When José passed away, many people who knew him were happy with his death. Many said that he wasn't a good guy, so of course investigators looked into his background to see if he had been a target. When the family was asked, there was a mention of Noah Bloom, who was the president of Live Entertainment and had mafia connections, but he had a good alibi. They explored other business dealings, as José was brutal in business and often yelled at others. They later found out that José bought a porno film operation from some people who were connected to the mafia. The person he had purchased it from was interviewed. He said he wouldn't have made it messy and wouldn't have killed the wife. Investigators later looked into connections in New Jersey, where they had once lived. There were rumors of family members saying the children were going to be disinherited, which set red flags off for investigators. Investigators took notice of the boys' spending. Lyle was staying at expensive hotels, and his father's American Express card was with him wherever he went. Lyle spent over $90,000. José hadn't given the boys much money. He kept a close eye on their spending. Police believe that the brothers spent $3 million the first 3 months of the killings. Lyle had even purchased a $64,000 Porsche, and he spent $24,000 at a stereo and TV store. Erik bought a $17,000 Jeep and also spent his time in an upscale hotel. Their family had advised them to slow down on the spending, but they believe the boys were grief-stricken and spending was an escape for them. Investigators learned that the boys had never been properly disciplined. José's brother-in-law Peter explained that there was an incident where Lyle was running around the living room. So when José asked him to stop and he didn't listen, José jumped up, grabbed Lyle, looked him in the eye, and whispered something in his ear. Lyle turned pale, he was trembling, and immediately peed himself. Then José punched him in the chest, which knocked the wind out of him. José carried him to the room in which Peter, his brother-in-law, followed, telling him that this was no way to raise a child, but José said that this was his house and he could do whatever he wanted to do. Marta Cano said that Kitty was harsh on the boys. She didn't show much affection towards them. She would often grab the boys the way that José had, by the arm, shake them, and then throw them. She would bang things and break things and would call her sons stupid idiots. There was an incident at an amusement park where Erik was scared to enter a tent full of tire tubes, but his cousin Maria, who was the same age as him, jumped in, and Kitty took it upon herself to call Erik a coward. He cried uncontrollably. Here's another incident that's horrifying. When Lyle was 7, he brought a rabbit home from school. It was the end of school year, and he wanted to keep this rabbit. However, Kitty said that Dad wanted him to give it away. Lyle was hoping his father would have a change of heart. Unfortunately, the rabbit went missing a few days later. Lyle asked his father, who told him to look into the garbage. Horrifyingly, the rabbit had been beaten to death and covered in blood. Now, Kitty didn't have much authority. José constantly told her to shut up and encouraged his sons to belittle their mother as well. He wanted the boys to act like men. In fact, he would often pressure Lyle to beat Erik so that Erik could become tough and learn to fight back. José really shut Kitty out and was focused on a tennis career for the boys. The boys came first. As I mentioned earlier, it became more so a burden for Lyle and Erik. One day, Lyle was playing with an injured foot. José ridiculed him, saying things like, "Poor baby, oh, he can't run." Well, this pissed off Lyle because he told his father to shut up. Jose was furious. He grabbed a tennis ball and threw it hard at Lyle, then ordered him to get into the limo. Jose then crawled in and grabbed Lyle by the neck and punched him in the face. He told Lyle, quote, "Don't ever embarrass me like that or I'll kill you. Do you understand?" Blood dropped off Lyle's face. He was terrified. Meanwhile, Kitty was in a deep depression. She had been this way since moving to California. She started drinking and was suicidal. Jose was having an affair with a booking agent named Megan. She thought he was very attractive and charming, and the two would go on business trips that were just getaways together. Megan said that Jose wasn't getting excitement at home, but he was with her. She said that the boys got in the way of their relationship and Jose would cancel their trips for tennis tournaments, and when she met the boys, she saw them as, quote, arrogant snots. Yet she wanted Jose to leave his wife. But Jose wasn't just seeing Megan. He was also seeing a woman named Charlotte in New York for 8 years. Kitty caught on to that affair, going through credit card statements. She even hired a private investigator and found where Charlotte lived and stood outside her home. But Kitty stayed with Jose because she felt that she would have nothing without him. And social status was important to Kitty, and she would lose that too if she left Jose. Kitty had some issues, as you can tell. She had once been admitted to the hospital, diagnosed with acute Xanax and alcohol, indigestion, and depression. The nurse made a note not to hand the medication to Kitty, as she was ingesting more than she was prescribed to. It was recommended that she stay in the psychiatric ward, but Jose and Kitty insisted everything was fine. She later threatened to poison the family, and some days Jose would take the boys out to eat because of this. Kitty blamed the boys for their marriage issues and claimed Jose loved them more than he loved her. She told Marta she wished the boys were never born. When Erik found a suicide letter, Lyle told his mom to leave Jose and live with him, and that they would side with her on the divorce. On August 15, Kitty and Lyle had an argument. Kitty screamed and charged at Lyle with clenched fists. "Your tennis is going to cause my dad's death," she yelled. A few days earlier, on August 9th, they were going to Canada after Lyle's tournament to see Kitty's dying father who had cancer. However, Lyle lost the tournament and Jose was upset. He told Kitty to go by herself. She refused because she believed Jose would cheat on her while she was away. Of course, Kitty sadly didn't fly out to see her father, blaming this on Lyle. Out of anger, Kitty ripped the hairpiece off Lyle's head. Lyle started crying in agony. The hairpiece was stuck to his head with glue, so of course he felt intense pain. While he cried, Kitty complained about the $1,500 they spent on it. She threw the hairpiece right back at him. Jose had made Lyle get the hairpiece because he felt that he needed thick hair if he wanted a future in politics. So before Lyle would make any contacts at an Ivy League school, he would get this hairpiece. When Lyle turned around, he saw Erik standing there in shock. Erik had not known Lyle wore a hairpiece. Erik was trembling and asked to speak with Lyle. When they met up to speak, something was bothering him, but it wasn't the hairpiece. You see, Erik wanted to get away from the house. He was hopeful that going to UCLA meant he would be in a dorm living on his own. However, Jose changed his mind and demanded Erik spend 3 to 4 nights at home so him and Kitty could monitor his schoolwork. Erik confessed to Lyle that Jose was still molesting him. Lyle was confused and asked him why he didn't fight back. Erik began crying. Lyle blamed himself. Jose had done this to Lyle when he was 6. Jose said it was something Roman and Greeks had done before battle, and this would be a bonding moment for them. Eventually it stopped and the family rules became stricter. No one went into Erik's room when Jose was in there. When Lyle was 13, he had been suspicious of his father doing things. He confronted him. Jose said it was over. That night, Lyle was worried for Erik. Erik fell asleep, and as Lyle laid next to him, he thought to himself, wondering how this could have continued for so long. They would have to threaten Jose to stop, or else they would tell people.
Did you cry?
Yes.
Did you bleed?
Yes.
Were you scared?
Very.
Did you ask him not to?
Yes.
How did you ask him not to?
I just told him, I don't. I just told him that I didn't want to do this, and that it hurt me. And he said that he didn't mean to hurt me, and he loved me.
Was that important to you, that he loved you?
Yes, very. But I still didn't want to do it.
Did you tell your mom?
Yes.
What did you say to your mom?
I told her to tell Dad to leave me alone. And he keeps touching me.
What did your mom say?
She told me to stop it. And that I was exaggerating. And that my dad has to punish me when I do things wrong. And she told me that he loved me.
The originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
My dad.
Okay.
My dad.
Your Honor, can I ask a leading question?
If you don't ask my dad.
Wait 1 second, Mr. Menéndez. Okay, let me ask.
No, he was in the process of answering, so there's no need to ask him.
Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, it was you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me.
And did you want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I wanted to stop him.
Were you seeking help from your brother?
Yes.
And when you were in Israel in 1990, did you feel that seeking help from your brother was why your brother was in jail?
Yes.
Say to stop, or else they would tell people. Lyle told his mother what was going on, hoping Kitty would support them. She didn't. Instead, she got angry and kicked Lyle out of her bedroom. The next day, Lyle waited for José in their library after he arrived from New Jersey. Lyle was worried Kitty would talk to José before he did. When José arrived, both him and Kitty went up to the bedroom. When José came back, he sat down in the library room and lit a cigarette. He may have already known what was about to go on. Lyle blurted out that he knew everything that was going on and demanded he stop. José uncrossed his legs, put his cigarette down, and leaned forward, shouting, "You listen to me. What I do with my son is none of your business." Lyle screamed at him, "You're a sick person and I'm going to tell everyone about you, including your family and the cops." José leaned back in his chair and with a calm voice he said, "We all make choices, son. You've made yours and Erik has made his." Nervously, Lyle said, "I'll only tell if it doesn't stop." José replied, "You will tell anyway." Since their public image was so important, Lyle believed Kitty would take José's side and they would take action. Him and his brother were now in danger. José went to Erik's room, threatening he would not let Lyle tell anyone. "I warned you not to tell anyone." He then threw Erik on the bed and left. Erik charged into the family room where Kitty was. She looked over and said, "What's wrong with you?" Erik replied, "You wouldn't understand." Kitty seemed medicated and she said with a smirk on her face, "I understand a lot more than you think." "I know, I've always known. What, do you think I'm stupid?" Erik told Kitty, "I hate you," and charged out of the room to Lyle. Kitty followed. Erik yelled, She knows, and Kitty replied, nobody ever helped me. Erik and Lyle considered going to the cops, but they believed they would end up killed. Kitty and José had 2 rifles, and they thought that they might even have handguns. Oddly, José and Kitty told the boys they were going on a family fishing trip. He had told his business associate that he was an expert deep-sea fisherman, so before going shark fishing, he wanted to learn the basics. Erik and Lyle were confused about the trip. Why would they go fishing in the middle of a family crisis? The 2 were paranoid. Were their parents going to kill them? Erik and Lyle huddled together the whole fishing trip, thinking if anything happened to them, they would just jump off the boat. The captain thought it was odd that the boys stayed at the bow, where they had been soaked and were shivering. Only once they got home, Kitty and José went to bed, locking their doors. It was a little before midnight, but the boys drove to UCLA campus to talk. They were relieved nothing happened, but they were still very much concerned. When they got back, the doors were locked. They rang the doorbell. Kitty was furious. She yelled at them. Lyle, with a sarcastic tone, said, if you trusted us to have a key, we wouldn't have to bother you. Kitty was very much pissed off at this point. She yelled at Lyle, saying, I hate you. You're nothing but a problem. I wish you'd never been born. Lyle was stunned. Erik tried to defend him, but Kitty turned around and glared at Erik. If you hadn't kept your mouth shut, things might have worked out in this family, she said. A little while later, José pounded at Erik's door. Open up. Terrified, Erik retrieved his loaded gun and pointed it at the door. You'll have to come out in the morning and I'll be there, José promised before stomping away. Cradling his shotgun, Erik trembled the rest of the night. Although the Menéndez brothers were not an immediate suspect, Erik couldn't take the guilt and confessed his involvement to his psychotherapist. Dr. Oziel ignored his own ethical responsibilities and taped the session in an attempt to impress his mistress. But the woman ended up going to the police with her information, and in March 1990, Lyle, 22, and Erik, 19, were arrested. Family members, including cousin Diane Vandermolen, testified during the first trial about the alleged abuse. She said that Lyle once confided in her about the inappropriate contact with their father, but when she informed Kitty, she dismissed the claims. Diane's mother is Kitty's sister, who has come out to say that she does not forgive Kitty for what she allowed to happen to Lyle and Erik. Many of the family members on Kitty's side and José's side do support the brothers. In the first trial, in which the brothers were tried separately, the jurors for Lyle and Erik were deadlocked. As disturbing as this is, many men didn't believe boys could be molested by their fathers and accused the female jurors of being emotionally biased. Now, that's where that myth came from that Erik was gay. Prosecutor Lester Kiriyama repeatedly tried to bring up the issue of Erik's sexuality, but Judge Weisberg refused to allow it. During the closing argument, he argued to the jury that José did not force Erik into homosexual acts, but was in fact furious that Erik was gay. Erik later told Barbara Walters in an interview in 1996 that, quote, the prosecutor brought that up because I was sexually molested. He felt in his own thinking that I was sodomized by my father. I must have enjoyed it. In the second trial, the brothers were tried together. Manslaughter was taken off the table and much of the abuse evidence was excluded. Hazel Thornton, who served on Erik's jury, said, quote, I think if people knew more about what really happened in the first trial and what happened in the second trial, they would see that it was a miscarriage of justice. Now, since 2023, there is new evidence supporting Erik and Lyle's claims of abuse. Former Menudo member Roy Rosello claimed he was essayed by José Menéndez, and a letter from Erik to his cousin, written months before his parents' killing, was just discovered, in which Erik mentions the essay from José. And finally, I'm going to leave here Erik and Lyle's response to the TV series that just came out on Netflix. Thank you so much for watching, and for now, take care and stay safe.